She is what you call a power player in the industry of sports broadcasting. Michelle Salvatore joining me, and she does a whole lot in the industry. You know her as executive producer, general manager at Compass Media, also with Adhara Communications. We're going to touch on those things. We're going to share her story in a unique way because there's so much of what she does in the working world, but there's a lot more as far as her passions and her interests. And so we're going to get the well-rounded look of Michelle here on the On This Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, do some stuff with KLAC, with UCLA. Michelle, I've had a lot of your colleagues on. I'm excited to have you on and for people to really understand who you are. And I look forward to this chat with you.
I'm so excited to be here. I know we've had to schedule a bunch of times, and thank you for accommodating me and our crazy schedule. And I'm excited. Let's do it.
Yes, let's get after it. And obviously, you just came back from the Super Bowl. Want to touch on that in a moment. But to start here, Michelle, how many hours have you been on a plane over the course of your career?
Oh my goodness. More than I could actually count and put together. So if you take just at a basic level, what I do with Compass and how long I've been with them, let's say 20 weekends a year for the past, 14 years. That's not including all the double dipping and everything else that we end up doing. So we're talking about over 125,000 miles a year traveled.
You've got that, but also you have, outside of when you are traveling for work, you have a love of travel. You go out and see the world. And when you're out there seeing the world and you're scuba diving, what are you seeing out there? And that curiosity that seemingly carries through with you, whether you're working or whether you're going out and doing things to see the world in its nature.
I've been so blessed with my career and my job that it's been able to afford me things like air miles, right? And so at a certain point in time, I went, wait a second, I do get some downtime when I'm not so crazy. I want to go and I want to explore all the things that I can. And so it was about 6 years ago, I decided I was going to start scuba diving. It was sort of a lifelong dream. And I went, you know what? No place better than to start right now. I got on a plane, went to Mozambique, Africa,
Wow.
and I got certified to scuba dive there. And I've been doing it ever since. And what I can say is that I kind of think of it as like, I can't get to space and explore space, right? But there's so much under the surface that we haven't been able to, really explore yet either. And just to dive down 60 feet below surface level and be like, wow, there's a turtle and there's a shark. It gives you a whole different perspective on where you are in the big picture and the whole circle of life.
You are an adventure seeker, a thrill seeker, and obviously that expands outside of work. But where do you first recall, Michelle, where even before college or when you were young growing up, where you really knew that there was something about adventurous feelings and seeing things that captivated your attention and seemingly has taken you on this incredible journey?
Yeah, I've been, I guess, a thrill seeker my whole life. I started out figure skating at a really early age. And so you have to have a little bit of that no fear mentality when you're like, you want me to get on a little pair of blades and jump in the air and twist and so it just started as I think as being an athlete. From there I went into cheering. I cheered competitively all throughout college. And again, there is that thrill seeking thing of I'm going to trust you to throw me up in the air and I'm going to do a flip and someone's going to catch me. And at some point in time, you have to throw caution to the wind and go, yeah, I mean, that's physics, right? You're going to go up and you're going to come down and someone's going to catch you in between. So I think that started out that like adventure seeking. And then I was really lucky through cheer. I went to London when I was a senior in high school and I got to experience different cultures and just really early on. And that was it. Once I got a little taste, I was like, there's so much else out there. And not that I don't love where we are, but it was just, it whet my appetite.
For sure. And the idea of you being fearless in the business, and here you are getting started. How do you feel like you have embodied that characteristic and how that's taken you from step to step as you've been building up in this industry?
You definitely have to have a thick skin. Um, Being a woman in the sports industry you know, very much so. I think that I developed that early on. In high school, kids are mean. And so I was bullied in high school, and it taught me really early on that whatever your focus is, you need to don't take your eye off the ball. You need to go after what you want, and whatever anyone else is going to say, um, that has no effect on what your actual final outcome is or what you can actually do. And so I took that to heart. I mean, I remember at one point in time, my mom had said to me in school, like, if you want to change schools, we could do that, because kids are terrible. And I just said to her, but that means that they win.
Yeah.
And, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to let them win, And so, that made me really tough. And, once I got to college, things were easier, and people grow up a little bit. But I took that kind of mentality of, you're going to persevere because someone's always going to have something to say about you. Someone's always going to want to take you down. There are people that are always going to want to lift you up, but you've got to balance both of that. And so I was lucky enough that I had enough support around me early on to still give me some faith in myself to do what I wanted to do. And then when I went out into the real world, find a tribe that could, rally behind me and go, wait, you want to do that? I can help you try. Like, we can help and try to succeed in where you want to go. And so that was super important.
Well, looking back at those formative experiences for you, Michelle, how proud are you in looking back at the way you have been a fighter and the way that with the support system that you have been able to stand up for yourself and to channel in that fighting instinct that has opened up doors for you and allowed you in the end to be the winner?
Yeah, I'm very, very happy of all that I've accomplished and proud. 100%. I think that when it comes to the perseverance aspect of it, there are times, and throughout my career too, when we've launched new things where you look at a task and a mountain ahead of you going, I don't know if I'm going to be able to climb that. Or truth be told, did I sign up for something more than I can return on, and to kind of have that experience behind you, and have us, my mom and my family and my friends in my corner going, no, you've got this, you're okay. And then that little voice in my head that came from, those years of being told I couldn't do anything right, you're like, wait, I got to shut down everything else, and I'm going to just put one foot in front of the other and do what I do best, which is, figure things out. And so, so it makes me sad to think about how kids are, when they're early, and where that stems from. But also, I do think that I got to where I am because it made me develop such like a thick skin and such a determination to be like, no, I can do this.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Michelle Salvatore is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. The blessing in disguise of that adversity and where you'd be without that, and how, like you said, that built the thick skin within you, that persistence, that perseverance, the idea that I'm going to make it and there's no other option. And you've been able to channel that. And for you, the way in which you're also able to step away, and yoga is a big part of your life and with core power and everything you do there. So here you have this fighting spirit and this mentality and rising the ranks. But then you have this other side of you. Where does yoga stand as far as how it centers you, given all that you're doing, and then you are able to let go of that and then totally enter a new realm that is yoga?
Yeah, so I started doing yoga probably 10 years ago as a way to detach from, the craziness and the hubbub of everyday life, and managing and balancing, not only work, but just life and friends and your relationships and everything else. And I really was looking for something more than going to a gym. And like I needed a spiritual aspect, or some sort of mental connection too. And so a friend of mine said, you should really try yoga. And I tried it and I never looked back. And what
Wow.
I realized is that, as a person, what you do is only a part of, as for work, is only a part of who you are. And for me, for so many years, I judged myself based on what I was doing, how I was performing at work, and the rest of myself was sort of in the shadows. I identified with my job.
Yeah.
And when I started yoga, I started to go, wait, let me identify with myself first and realize that
Wow.
the job is a part of me, but I could be super content just being as a whole person without what my performance is. And it actually made my performance better because the focus came off of, what are you doing every day to like, how are you doing every day? And what are you bringing to the table instead of what are you producing and pushing out there? And so the perspective and shifted inward, and it made me better outwardly to everyone else
Well, and
or
when
for
you,
everything else.
I love the way you said that, Michelle. And then I'm sure that when you had that change of mind, that the universe like opened you up to all these new friends, all these new people are coming into your life. And eventually, I would have to think one of the greatest days of your life was July 24th, 2021. And that day, what was that like?
It was wonderful. That was the day I married my husband, Brett. And that was another one of those sort of. I came out of meeting him. I came from right out of a trip from Cambodia. So
Oh.
I every year I try and go on after the football season, after Big Ten tournament. I tell Peter Kosan, who's my CEO, and understands that there's that need for me. But I'm like, I'm gonna disappear for 2.5 weeks. Please don't call me, like, unless something is burning down, like, please don't call me, leave me alone. And he's wonderful and understands, that we all need that. And so I'd gone to Cambodia, basically trying to figure out, again, go deeper into who I am, what I want in life, and everything else. And I came back and I met this guy at a party, and he was really nice. And we had this great conversation. And, the next thing we know, we're at lunch and it's a 5-hour conversation. And it's funny because in the beginning, I told him I was a yoga instructor first. And I didn't mention anything about what I do for football or sports because I had interesting encounters with, past suitors about, oh my God, you work in football. Can you tell me what Dak Prescott is like? And then that's the rest of your journey, right? And your dating is what's going on in the football scene and, for people that are super fans and everything else. And so I originally told Brett, I teach yoga. And then he was like, well, where are you going for all these things? And you're traveling around. And then so eventually I was like, well, actually I have another job, And so, yeah, so that was the best day of my life. I married my best friend. I consider him a partner in everything that I do. And, funny enough, he had gotten certified to scuba dive 30
Oh,
years
wow.
prior. Yep. And then I had taken him on a trip. The Cowboys were playing the Rams out in Hawaii. And I said to him, I'm going to scuba there. And he went, oh, I scuba. And I said, great, you should come with me. But he forgot to mention that he hadn't scuba in 30 years.
Oh, gosh.
So our first, trip together, I made him put on a dive pack and, take 100-foot dive down to a shipwreck below in Hawaii. And he did fine. And so, he passed the test.
What did he see? What did he see down there, that shipwreck? What did you see down there?
It was great. We saw turtles, we saw sharks. You see a massive shipwreck. The experience of being weightless and just floating, in open space is not one that it's hard to describe to someone else. But I would just definitely say if anyone has an interest in doing it, you should definitely scuba dive. It's just such an outer worldly perspective and experience.
On this journey of yours, Michelle, where you are learning more about yourself and yoga and other things scuba have taught you that, how has your husband stepped in and allowed you to see yourself in a different light or look at yourself in a different light that's been enriching for both of you?
Yeah. So, not to get all yoga, yin yang, feminine, masculine, but I work in a man's world. And so, um, it was nice to let go of sort of that masculine edge and everything. When I found a partner who let me embrace, the feminine side of everything. And so it was also a learning experience too, though, because, I'm a producer and I'm in charge and I'm running around and I'm saying, do this and do that. And there's a lot that goes into what we do on a day-to-day basis, and I'm in control all the time. And so to find someone who matched my energy level and then said, I see you and I meet you there, but also you don't have to plan what dinner is. Like, I got that tonight,
Wow.
was really refreshing, and it was like, oh yeah, wait a second. I don't have to do everything. I have a partner who will, pick up the reins when I can't, and vice versa, and it's nice for him too, because there are certain things that I'm like, wait a second, I've already done this before and I can handle that. And so we really look at it as like, we're both good at separate things, right? And then when we can come together, it's finding that balance that we've managed to do pretty well.
How have you given him balance? We've talked about how he's helped you, but what have you done for him where he said to you, Michelle, you've changed my life, in what that
Yeah.
looks like?
So, for example, he got certified to scuba dive 30 years ago and then never went again. And I said to him, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, I never had anyone to go with. Whereas on the other
Ah,
side, I was, well, I just want to do it. So I'm going to go do it. Right. And so, I kind of got him out of his comfort zone of like, well, no, we're going to do it all together now because, and so we've taken a lot more adventures together. I was always okay going away solo, but most people don't want to go on vacation solo, right? My schedule just happened to always dictate when I could go and whether or not I could go with friends and family. And so I just, when I met him, his schedule is much more fluid. And so it was like, well, we're going to go and we're going to go. And so, he's been on, different trips and everything else. And, he's an entrepreneur. So it's a different world. And so because I'm a producer, every day I have certain things that have to get done. And so now I'm like, okay, well, what do you need to get done today? There's some structure there. And
there's
then
some
he's also
structure.
said some structure. And then he says to me, well, how are you going to relax today? What are you going to like take off your plate? So it's fun. We have a really good balance.
Well, and when he says that, then what is your answer to relaxing?
I mean, yeah, sure.
There's so much I
No,
got to get done.
no,
Yeah.
yeah. And no, he has helped me with that so much. Like, okay, I do need a break right now. I've been going at it, and it's okay not to answer that phone call. They'll leave a voicemail and I'll get to it in a little bit. And so that's been super helpful to understand that, again, going back to that whole, prior to yoga, what you do as far as work is not who you are
Yes.
ultimately. And so I know that I have certain things that have to get done every day, weekly, monthly, in order to do my job the right way. But do I have to answer that email right now? I'm in the middle of dinner. The answer is no, you know, and that I've learned from being with him. And that has made my life feel a lot more calm. That instant gratification of getting the email off, it doesn't have to happen. Finish the conversation, finish the dinner, then respond.
Yeah, that email is going to be there after dinner. And
Yeah, and we put a lot of, I mean, at least I put a lot of pressure on myself going, well, someone emailed me, so I need to respect their time and email back. But what I forgot to factor in is the other person doesn't necessarily expect an instant response. They're going, let me email Michelle or whoever to, ask her this answer. Unless it's like, I need to know right now. But what I've learned, and except when we're doing live play-by-play, there's not many things that need to know right now.
Yeah.
You've got a window of time. And so, so that was a very hard habit for me to break, though. So I'd
Wow.
wake up and be like, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And, someone on the East Coast had emailed me, my phone dings and I'm typing at 4 a.m. when I'm like, they could wait till I, get up, so you're okay. It's fine.
Good on you for having that realization and for you to step back a little bit. You're able to get it all done, but still you're looking after yourself as well. And when you're able to do that, then the work just shines. So that entrepreneurial spirit your husband has, I feel like you have some of that within you too. And it was seen. We're talking to you a couple days after the Super Bowl, and with Adhara Communications, here you are right in the weeds of everything that's happening in Glendale. What does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, so I didn't know I wanted to be a business owner until it not fell into my lap. I had to do a lot to accomplish it. But a couple of years ago, um, all the radio networks that work with the NFL, the flagships, all use a system. It's an MPLS, a private secured network. To dial in, I'm sure you use a Comrex and whatnot. And so to dial in back and dial home to their flagship station. And so as EP of Compass, we used to license out, or rather contract out to a company who used to supply these lines. 2 years ago, we were told that the company was no longer going to do it. They kind of said, hands up, the technology is changing, the infrastructure is going to be too much to redo, and we want to get out of it. And so we were all sort of left holding the bag. And so we'd been on many, many calls with other flagships, and everyone kind of said, well, what are we going to do? And no great solutions presented themselves. And so I happen to have grown up with an amazing woman who works over at Verizon. She's one of my best friends. And I called her up and I said, and I didn't even know the real terms. I was like, is an MLPS? Well, like, there's this whole system. Can you guys do it? And she said, of course we can. We're Verizon, And so this was prior to Brett and I getting married. And so I went back to the teams and I said, hey, I got Verizon lined up. They can redo this whole system for us. And I found this other company who can manage it and we can put it all together. And they were like, that's amazing. And I said, great, here are the contacts, go for it. And they went, no, like, you've already done such a good job. You've done all the research. You could take it. And I said to myself, I'm getting married in 6 weeks. What do you mean I have to do this? And so but I did it. And so with the help of Verizon and Bitfire, who's one of my partners, we rewired 31 NFL stadiums in about 6 weeks. We refibered all of them, created an MPLS network, a private network that's secure that 30 out of the 32 teams use. Westwood One uses it, ESPN uses it, Compass Media uses it, Learfield uses it. And I am their game day infrastructure from stadium back to their flagships.
Wow. So, and here you are at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It helping put all this together and making sure it's getting pulled off in the right way. The day to day of you being there and making sure it goes right, what does that entail for you, like at the Super Bowl?
And so the infrastructure that we have is great. It works. We have had very minimal issues. The day-to-day when we're at Super Bowl is all the faxing out and making sure there are no issues. And so the way it's been designed, it should be great year round. And the teams have been able to rely on it for 2 years now. But Super Bowl, other companies come in, there's exponentially way more broadcasts and lines that are getting moved around. And so for us, it's making sure the lines are where we thought they were going to be, whether or not they've gotten moved. Once they've gotten moved, there's a connectivity still there, making sure we've got uninterrupted power supplies to the different teams should, a blackout happen, as in New Orleans and whatnot. And so there's a lot of checking all the boxes and making sure that, these teams, it's super important. There's hundreds and, there's so much money on the line for these games with advertisers and whatnot, that if that line goes down in the broadcast, you're losing ad dollars. You're also, screwing up, an audience's experience. And so for us, it's making sure that there's enough fail stops in place, that everything has been checked through over and over and over again, that we see the stations, we see that their data is being streamed through. And so yeah, so multiple times we were over at the stadium making sure. And
How do you stay so organized?
oh, I think women are very good at multitasking. I don't know a single female, that whether it's a mom who's handling her kids and everything else in the household, or to the women I work with who are all incredible, that, we're organized. You have to write it down. You have to put it down in your calendar. Um, there's a way to say, my crew and I, we have a fun system at my team at Compass. We use Post-its, which sounds so silly, but I literally come in on a Monday morning and I write down everything I need to do on one big Post-it, and I stick it on my computer. And as I get through it, I scratch it off. And anything I don't finish that day, I move to Tuesday, and there's a bigger one for the month. And so it's compartmentalizing in a way that, like, I hold myself accountable, because if it's not scratched off the list, I gotta get to it before I leave, right? Or by the end of the month, or whatever I've given my due date is. And so it's that just checking all the boxes as you go down.
One of those
Otherwise, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go. Yeah, no, you're absolutely. So one of the things that's high up on your list is a quote, and it's "You are exactly what you're supposed to be." And I know that you have internalized that and made that such a core to who you are. What does that quote mean to you?
I think it means more when things are harder than when things are going great, right? So for example, when Peter Kosan tapped me to start Compass with him, we didn't have any studios, we didn't have any formats, we had just begun signing teams. And I started, I think it was in May, and our first game was going to be September 2nd that year, right? And we had nothing.
Wow.
I had a BlackBerry, right? And so it was literally one of the most overwhelming times of my life, going, here's a person who put all their faith in me to create a sports network that's never been, created before. We had no infrastructure, we had nothing. I have to build all of these things. I have to hire this talent. I have to budget. I have to figure out equipment that needs to come in. I have to figure out formats. I didn't take over like a pre-existing company. We had to start from scratch. And so there were a lot of those like sleepless nights of going, oh my God, is this going to work? Right? Am I going to be able to pull this off? And so to be able to pull from, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, kind of gives you this sense of like, there's a bigger purpose, and it's hard right now, but you'll get there, you'll get through it. And so that's been a saving grace. Even when I was building Adhara, I've got 30 stadiums. Each of them have a different protocol and how they want to have their lines installed and everything else. I'm trying to get married, all these things are happening. And you have options. You can cry, which I did, right?
Oh,
Which is fine, right? Like, I've embraced
yes,
that now.
of
It's like,
course.
and even, when I was working in the meeting with Peter, like, crying is okay, right? But as
Yes.
long as you pull yourself back together. And so, but I could cry, but then I have to go, okay, but I could also do this, right? And when I do this, the payoff's going to be great, and it'll be good. And so, with Peter and Compass, we did it. We were on the air, and there's many sleepless nights, lots of tears, but that little mantra of being like, I can do this, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, kind of got me through it.
Well, and now those tears, as we wrap up this conversation, Michelle, they're tears of joy, considering what you've built. And those are free flowing, and rightly so, considering what you're doing at Compass Media, at Adhara Communications, and all the other things that seemingly you're a part of with the yoga and everything else that you enjoy from an adventure seeking perspective, which I was so glad that we went down that road as well, because to understand Michelle Salvatore, yes, you have to understand that she is a staple in the industry, but the other interests make her who she is. And those are super cool, super unique. Like you said, the scuba and visiting a shipwreck underneath the sea. That's incredible stuff that I'm sure that Michelle, when you went into this conversation, you probably didn't think we were going to go there.
I didn't know where the conversation was going to go. So I'm very happy to share those experiences, and you know, closing thoughts and all of that is when someone thinks that you can't, know that you can. Know that you're strong enough, and it's so hard to tell yourself that. But that's the mindset that I think got me through everything, of like, turn off all the other voices and make sure the voice that's coming from inside of you goes, I could do this.
You are a living testimony of that, and inspiration to me and so many. And thank you for your words of transparency, the candid speaking from the heart that I was really hoping we were able to get to. And thanks to you, we were able to really tap into that. Michelle Salvatore, executive producer, general manager, Compass Media, also with Adhara Communications. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio and UCLA KLAC. Thank you so much, Michelle, for doing this. This was so fun.
Thank you for having me.